Good morning, church. I'm excited to be here today. A love letter to the youth and children of Matsapha Anglican Church. So, if no one has ever written a love letter to you, this is going to be your first. I'm here to say that I appreciate you all and care for you, as directed to me by God Almighty at 1:30 a.m. That's when I got the real idea of what I really wanted to say today, even though I had some few days to think about it. So, Mfundisi, I'm really humbled. Thank you so much for the request to have me speak before the congregation today. And thank you for trusting me with this. I think it's a leadership task, which I want to deliver to the best of my ability. I was given 15 minutes, but I think some of you have heard academics like to speak for long. So I have 10 extensive points to cover with examples. And I tried as much as I can for these examples to come from my life or what I know, so that whenever you remember them, it's very close, or you think about, you've seen someone who's had firsthand experience of that. So my number one is that you should have career goals, set them and pursue them. Growing up, my father used to be a lecturer, and as young as her, I used to go to his lectures and I would sit at the back. Because my mother was a nurse, she had difficult shifts, so the only person that could be with me was my dad. So by the time I was 5 years old, I was like to my mom, I know what I want to do when I grow up. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to university. And I said it in Shona. I didn't know what I was going to do there, but that environment gave me an idea. So someone here today might have that seed sowed in them to say, I want to do what has been done by these people, even though you don't have a full grasp of what it means to be there. And then by the time I was 15 years old in boarding school, I found out that there was something called a PhD. And I was like, you know what? I want to have a degree and I want that PhD. And at that time, I used to write a lot of stories in class. So I said, I want to be a doctor of literature. I'm not a doctor of literature. 15 years down the line, before the age of 30, actually, by the time I was 29, I managed to get the PhD. And it was in politics. Why politics? Because as I was growing, and as much as I loved writing, when I started to think about the world, I was inspired by politics and had so many questions about the world. How did I also end up there? When I was in school, I joined the debate society. You know what happens with debates? There's a lot of political issues and current affairs you discuss. I was also part of what we called a school yearbook club, where we were also writing and profiling people who were doing well in class. And I also wanted to be part of creating history in the world. So as you can see, all of that constantly sharpened my skills in critical thinking. So you start with a skeleton, and then the flesh keeps coming up, but you need that skeleton. So I think to all the parents, all I want to say is also try and find something or ways to expose your children to different ways of living or different ways of pursuing careers. And that will give them something. My number two is pursue schooling with passion. I say with passion because life can be hard in school. I remember I had to take 8 subjects. I don't know how many some of you have taken. Is it possible to love all your subjects? Yes, I like that answer. So all of these things I'm saying today, I'm now saying them now, not because I was a perfect child. I'm only saying them now because of realizing later on, because no one really told me. I used to tell my dad, your school is hard. I don't think I'll pass. And he said, listen, I took you to school because school is hard. If school was easy, I would buy you books, make you read at home, and make you go write the exams. So yes, this is how school is supposed to feel. And I urge you not to be picky when studying. As I was thinking about some of the subjects that I studied today, for example, I mostly needed my English, my French, my geography, and history for what I wanted to do as a career. But studying accounting and maths really helped me. Because right now, for example, when I'm running my own business, I use those basic accounting principles. And if someone is going to do my books when I have a bigger business, I have an understanding of what is being done. Personally, I love running, and I always laugh that that one triangle of distance and speed and time is something I use a lot. So you can also end up using this in your lifestyle. Or maybe if I were to become, for example, a running coach or something else beyond that. But what I'm just trying to put out is that you might find value in everything that you study. There's a subject I personally disliked. So growing up, I didn't like cooking because I started cooking at the age of 9. One day, my mom was late from work and I was with her father. He was 5 years old. I was 9. I was like, how do they make pap? I started to put things together. I made some veggies. I could not cook meat. And then when my uncle was taking care of us back then, I think he was doing his Form 5. I said, who cooked? And I said, I cooked. You were late. I don't know what time mommy is coming. And then from then they said, now you can cook because you can cook. So when they say there's food and nutrition subjects, all the girls, I said, not doing food and nutrition. And then they say there's woodwork. I want to do woodwork. I want to do woodwork. And then the woodwork teacher, this man said, I don't teach girls. He refused. I was really hurt because I used to have a cousin. She had done woodwork. She would make pencil cases. She would make nice boards for her mother and all these things. And I think until this day, although I hold a grudge and have forgiven also, I think it would have been important for me to have done woodwork because even with my politics degrees, it was still going to help me to do a lot of stuff. I've lost an opportunity to even, do some furniture even for church or something like that. So I ended up doing fashion and fabrics. I hated it. I did not like it. I think the best that I ever sewed in that class was an apron. Everything else of putting together pieces and cutting out. But today, I still have some regrets to say, I should have just loved it a little more, because it would have helped me. Of course, now I can mend stuff. I can design like a tablecloth and, use filotion to make designs and whatnot because of that skill. So it's still very much important. And for some people, they go on to use some subjects as their hobbies. So fortunately for me, after like 2 years, I got the opportunity to do art. I liked to do portraits and draw and all of that. Unfortunately, it's a skill that I have slept on. But sometimes, for example, when I travel, I just take out my notebook. I don't use my camera. I'm with a pencil and I'm drawing. And I think it's very good for the mind. So don't take any subjects for granted. I have not spoken about the sciences, So I think the closest I did to sciences was something called integrated science. It mixed different sciences, and I also did biology. And I think that knowledge is very helpful because whenever I'm engaging with people from different fields, or even when I go to a doctor and they're explaining things, it's not completely new to me. Even when we speak about weather patterns and what's happening, it's because we got the exposure to that knowledge. So never ignore any subject. So number 3 is aim for post-school learning in any form. I like that. Thank you very much, Mrs. Apane. She touched on this. And when we say post-school, it doesn't mean you have to become like Dr. Prim. You can do courses, you can do a diploma, you can go to technical college, you can go to the police or the military academy, you can do nursing. There's so many opportunities that you can tap into. I'm saying this because sometimes the day you leave high school or the year you leave high school, you might not be as privileged, that's the word she used, as some people. So for example, for me, I was privileged that by the time I finished high school, my father had a job here. He came here when I was starting my first year, and he could think about paying for my fees. Other people have to start somewhere, maybe because government says anyone can come and sign up for teaching college or for police service or military college. You go there, you start there. There's people who've left the service or people who've risen up the ranks in those different services and they've made it in life. So never think that it is the end. You can still go back to university and study your degree. Personally, for example, my mother tells me that when she finished what we now call Form 4 O-levels in Zimbabwe, her father said, we don't send girls to advanced level. So you have to decide, are you going to police, are you going to nursing, are you going to teaching or military? And my mother was like, I want to be a police officer. My grandmother was like, no, you can't go to the police service. Who's going to marry you? Women who are police officers are rude. No one likes them in society. You should be caring. Go to nursing. As a result, my mother was a nurse from before I think she met my father. I think she met him when she was a nurse until I was 19 years old. But seeing her when we were growing up, I remember when I was 9 years old, she said, I want to do A level. She was doing night school after nursing. By the time they were here, she enrolled with UNESWA. She did her master's. And just after I finished my PhD, she was also finishing her own PhD. So you might realize that life might go in different ways, but if you still set goals and want to achieve them, it can still happen for you. So that one is also very important. You don't have to do, oh, I'm 15 when I'm 29, this, and it happens. Because sometimes life might go differently, but it doesn't mean you have to throw away your goals. The next one that I have in relation still to aiming for post-school learning in any form is that sometimes there's funding opportunities. Maybe you want to be a journalist, but you can't get funded to do journalism. You have to find another degree, find other ways, and do that in the meantime, but never lose focus of what you want to do ultimately. And then one more thing that I want to say in relation to post-school education is that be open to learning more, even when you have what you think is the highest degree. You've seen doctors, they go on to specialize. Some specializations can even take 5 years, you know? In my case, for example, yes, I finished my PhD. I was working at a university, but then the research contract that I had was going to end. As you all know, some research funds have been withdrawn because international donors are deciding where to fund these days. So I was just like, let me do this digital marketing course online, because these days a lot of people are using the internet for marketing and communicating with people. And during that time when I was still studying for the course, I was offered a job because I had the necessary skills. People wanted a political consultant who can create social media content so that people can understand political concepts. So that's not something you can take a random influencer to say, oh, come here, we want you to translate these political concepts. It has to be someone who wants to read, someone who's studied to a particular level and create content. For example, for LinkedIn, it has to be for professionals. If it's content for Instagram, you have the experience of being young. How do you create for young people? For TikTok, I did not want to use TikTok, but I was told we also need to catch young people. So think about it. So also to be flexible. And now I can actually say I'm using all those skills, including my degrees. So everything else, like I said, my skeleton, the flesh is still being added. Now I'm on my number 4. We won't all achieve the same milestones at the same pace or age. Fundi says we don't speak about people's ages, but for the purpose of this discussion, I think I just decided to share my age. So I thought that at the age of 33, I'm going to have a mansion. I'm going to be living in New York or in Geneva, working for the United Nations. But then at 33, I found myself back home. Yeah, 4 degrees. At least I'm working online. It's not a country, it's not a mansion. And I don't have any marriage experience and I don't have any parenting experience. But I have a friend who has 1 degree, a good job in finance, and she's living in the UK. And she has citizenship with 1 degree. I also have friends who have only started university now, but they have a 15-year-old daughter and over 10 years marriage experience. In 5 years' time, we're both going to be graduates, but she will be a graduate with a child who is in university and a 15-year-old marriage. I also know former schoolmates. There's one guy we studied politics with. I don't even know what happened. All I know that he opened a paint manufacturing company. He's been painting a lot of state-of-the-art houses. He's done DJ Zinkle's house and a lot more other mansions in Durban. But we're in the same politics class. And he's happy and he's got a family. I also know an accounting graduate who was my high school crush because he was a rugby player. He's doing well. He's a private chef cooking for diplomats and tourists. He's not a chartered accountant. So whatever happens as you progress in life, don't let life challenges push you or keep you down. Some of these people are where they are now because they could not find a job in their sector, or they could not find education to advance, money to advance their education, but did something with what they had. So I think what is there for me is that if you have a degree, you've done your undergrad, you've done your high school, you've even finished in grade 7, you have that spirit of achievement. So whatever God gives you at the end, just do it with flair. Just do it greatly. Just be excellent. If you're making cakes, be the cake boss. If you're doing events, people must just know, if I'm doing an event, I'm coming to this person. If you're a photographer or videographer, people might just think of you when they want to create a documentary or a film or anything. So I think that's what's most important, so that you aim for excellence in whatever achievements that come later. And then my 5th point today is that the world is changing faster than ever before. I get scared every time I go online and I see a video saying AI is going to take your job, or AI is changing the world in such a way that people that are leaving school today or tomorrow won't have opportunities. So sometimes you realize that you had these steps, you had this map you were drawing. But when you wrote your map, you didn't know that COVID was coming in 2019. You didn't know that there will be online jobs. You didn't know that artificial intelligence will come and change a lot of things. And so what you have to think about at every point, which is I don't have an answer now, is how am I adapting to the situation? That is what is always important. Of course, when the danger comes, you're going to have a setback. But I think to just have that spirit of saying, I will thrive no matter what comes. And then my number 6 is that build meaningful relationships along the way. So for me, I always hear people say network, 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 as if this is a thing you do after school, or when you have a career day, or when you go for an event. But I only realized later in life to say, I approached people with respect and I always built relationships, and I didn't know that they were meaningful. For example, when I was finishing my high school in Lesotho, I did history just for 6 months before changing to business, because at some point I thought I want to be like my father because he's a business studies lecturer. But I had created a relationship with my history teacher, which helped me because when I was doing my PhD, I was focusing on Lesotho. I could call him, approach him, and he linked me up to a lot of people that could help me with my research. And even after finishing, he said, you know what, if you ever want to write a book or get published, I know people. Give me a ring. This is someone I met in 2009 when I knew nothing about networking, but we're still connected, and I know we can always work together. And then when I was doing my 4th year in university, knowing that I wanted to do my master's, but I was struggling a lot, I just went to the person who was head of department for politics. And then I told him, I want to do my master's next year, and I want to know more about research. I don't know if I'll get a place because everyone keeps saying you guys only want 15 students. And for those 15 students, they also say we want maybe 6 international. For those 6 international, they also say we want 1 person from 1 country. Zimbabweans in South Africa are many guys. And many of them are smarter than me in terms of marks. So he said, what's your name? I told him, my name is Primrose Pima. And then he said, the fact that you came to me today and you were discussing research. He was from Ghana. He said, in our country, we say that sometimes you can notice a good hen from when it is a chick. And because I'm seeing that in you, all I want you to do is get a distinction for your research project, When you apply, I'll just grant you the place. So I was not being told that I'll get you the place because I see potential. No, you've got potential. Prove yourself in your academics, and I'll ensure that next year you'll be back because I want to supervise you. And that's one other thing that is important. Most of the success people gain in PhD or masters is because of supervisors. Someone who wants to work with you, someone who is interested in your career development. So that is very important. And then when it comes to students, some of you are lecturers, some of you are tutors. It is very surprising. I used to tutor students who were like 19 years old, maybe when I was 26. And after COVID, 2022, moving to now, I managed to go to do presentations in Germany and in Netherlands, all expenses paid. I asked these people, how did you get to know my name when you were looking for someone to speak on Africa? They're like, no, there's a student who was studying at your university this other year. So she said, if you want someone to speak on this, this is the person to go to. Those students were not my favorites. Some of them I even forgot their surnames. I had to Google their full names to be like, oh, that's the person. So even being nice in the way you treat people and people just seeing wisdom through you and wanting to promote you, that can be really helpful. Sometimes, traveling with my father in Eswatini, you go to a bank, Dr. Bima. I'm like, do you know her? No. We go to some shop, we're doing something. Dr. Bima, do you need assistance with this? I'm sure those students went through so many lecturers. University, you do even up to 20 courses. But I don't think they do that to all their 20 lecturers. So as you teach people, just show some kindness and be a person that people want to say, I'm associated with them. I know them. If you want someone who can do this, that's your go-to person. And then the next one is about meaningful relationships with peers. I used to talk a lot when I was in university. I think I still do. So every evening at the dinner table, 5 till 8 p.m., I was talking politics, what is in the world. Everyone who was from different departments, they wanted to sit on my table. At the end of the day, I would not eat. I would have yogurt and juice because I'm talking. But after university, I remember the first time I got a call from some organization. They said, no, we want you to speak. The African Union is turning 25. This was 2017. And I said, what do you mean I must come and speak about the African Union? They're like, no, we know you know about this stuff. I did my presentation. I asked them, who told you about me? They said, there's a lady called Mamelo. She was in our Africa department. I said, I used to sit with her at dinner. She never became my friend. But there's a seed that was sown. And even now, that organization, whenever they have a program on the African Union, since 2017, they call me, they invite me, I facilitate presentations. This is now all paid work, not, just come and speak. Do this research for us. Please read this document for us. And it's been nice and helpful. So whoever you connect with, just know that it could be networking. It's not the networking that is always advertised. Yes, going to events might help and whatnot, but just be a good person overall, because you never know. My number 7 is be a lifelong reader. Oh, I'm over 24 minutes. I'm sorry. So I think these days we have a lot of condensed information from social media. There's good podcasts, there's good influencers, but take books and read. Even if it is the Bible that Mfundisi can interpret to you every Sunday, even if it is newspapers, you need to read for yourself. It is exercise for your brain. You gain more authentic accounts. So for example, for me, I love reading books that are written by people about their lives, because I get a better first-hand understanding of what it is they went through, how they pursued certain goals, and how they got to where they are today. And it's so much better than just listening to them or to a 1-minute TikTok that someone clipped and posted about that person. And then number 8, have fun and do so responsibly. For me, fun is running, skipping, playing tennis. Other people love going to the gym. Other people love dancing and whatever. But I'm saying this because life doesn't mean that if you're pursuing goals, you just need to be stuck up. You need to find ways of just being energetic and appreciating your body. And some people love hosting people, for lunches, for breakfast, and whatever. Just make sure you have more than just that strict stuff that is academic or career related. And then my number 9 is guard your plans in pursuit of excellence. So and so will say this, so and so say that, or what will people say will be the death of you. I remember when I landed in Cape Town, I didn't land by flight, by the way. I took a bus from Harare to Johannesburg, and then a bus from Park Station to Cape Town. I think that was of 2 days. And then a combi from Cape Town Station, which is a taxi station, to University of Cape Town. And my aunt said, "You came to Cape Town to study politics." I still didn't know how to process that. But because I was always driven to succeed and I believe that my parents would not make a mistake, I let myself push forward. But I can imagine what that could have done to someone else's self-esteem in the bigger scheme of things. And then, please never tell my mother this story. Don't record it for her. When I was 25, when I got a PhD scholarship and I decided I was going to Cape Town, I think I'd met someone like 2 months earlier. And that person was so serious. They had their money in order. They were ready to marry and have kids. And I'm like, I want to go do my PhD. I got funding. I'm going to UCT. So how do we maneuver our relationship? And the person was like, women like you are not found in marriages. They said it in Shona. In Shona, they said, who speaks Shona here? Wakazi wakaita sewa wawani kwa mzimba. Shoo! And I was like, but I'm 25. I can have a child when I'm like after the PhD, 28, 29, get pregnant while I'm waiting to get the degree. They were like, no, if you want to go do your PhD, just go do it. That person today, never married, always looking for me. I block everywhere. I'm like, if you had just waited, if we had just flourished together, could have celebrated. I have no regrets. I think it's their loss. And I hold no grudges. So there are some sacrifices that are necessary. But of course, this is very different for people who are already in marriages. And I think I told you already my mother's example. She went into marriage with just her O-levels, but look at her now. So it's important to find people that see your vision and want to go where you are going. And people who will be genuinely happy for your successes. My very last one, we are in church. I'll never forget this. Put God first in everything. Talk to him. Tell him your wildest dreams. I say wildest because sometimes we dream wild beyond what we have. Explain your fears. Commit your plans and actions and ask for direction. For me, when I start thinking about my successes, they're very much linked to prayer. When I was 12 years old, I used to have rich cousins. My family was one of the poorest in the Bima line. And then they'll be like, oh, I'm going to this private school. I'm doing this, this, and that. And I'll always write in my diary, hey, God, I want to go to an international school. My mother was a nurse. Nurses didn't get paid a lot in Zim. My father was just a civil servant. I don't know what happened. God made my mother go to Lesotho to work as a nurse. When I finished my O-level, my mother said, come and live with me. When we were asking people, which schools can this girl go to? Someone was like, just go to the international school. They have different fees for different people. I'm sure for your daughter, you will find a fee scheme. By the time I was 16, my mother was still in the job she had. My father was still a civil servant in Zim. And somehow I ended up in an international school. Then I was like, wait a minute. And then all those other cousins wanted to talk to me. They're like, you're going to international school. I'm like, yes. And next year I'm going to the best university in Africa. What? You're going to the University of Cape Town. Where are you going to get the money? I don't know. Also, God intervened. My father had a car he had been given at work. He was like, your fees for first year, I'm just going to sell this car. My mother also sold her very first car. They said, you're going to the best university in Africa. The money for the next 4 years or for master's PhD, God was going to make a plan. So believe in yourself. I used to fast when I was in Form 1 for that thing I said when I was 5, I want to go to university. And in Form 4, there's even a time when I fasted for 3 days, dry fast. I didn't know. I almost died because now I couldn't stand up. And my friends came and poured water on me. They're like, Prem, it's enough. Because we used to fast in groups and others would give up. When I saw them holding food, I would be slapping their hands. We are still fasting. So these things, I thank Form 1 me where I am today. And then also pray to God to say, Father, find me people who can help me. Sometimes you don't know those people. When I got my PhD place at UCT, they said they would fund me, but that doesn't mean they'll fund your visa. I was stressed. I was sitting and working in Zim. I was living with one of my rich uncles. And then he said to me, but if you don't have money to apply for a visa, why are you even bothering? And I said, no, I just need to make it happen. So there's a friend I told this plan, and then my friend was like, listen, apply for your visa. These are my card details in the CVV, that thing at the back. Any payment you need to do, do it. What? I went online, visa facilitation service. I did my application, I posted. Then when I told my uncle, oh, I just submitted my application, I had to go to an internet cafe, even though there was Wi-Fi at home, because obviously they didn't want me to prosper. He said, you applied? Yes. So you're going to get your visa? I was like, yeah, I'm going to submit all my forms. They gave me a visa application date. And I made it. To leave Zimbabwe, I didn't have money. My parents paid for a bus ticket for Intercape to get me to Joburg. I took a combi here. And then they also got me money to go to Cape Town. Got to Cape Town, an aunt of mine gave me accommodation. She said, listen, you are like a big sister to my kids. You sleep where they sleep, eat what they eat, everything, until you're fine. And then a friend of mine was like, I know you've started your PhD, and when you start, they're going to give you money. If you want any rent deposit so that you can live closer to university, because your aunt's place is far, you wake up at 4, I'm going to give you that rent deposit. I didn't ask. I didn't I didn't try hard. I was just stating, oh no, I'm going to stay with my aunt until things are fine. And then someone comes with a new solution. So it's very important to just pray for God to give you. Other people use the term destiny helpers. People will come through for you. Scholarships come, sometimes you're unsuccessful. For me, my best marks were for my undergrad. But with that undergrad, I got rejections. 2015, 2016, 2017. The only reason why I managed to do my master's in 2016, Mike had finished his high school. He said to Dad, I want to do a gap year. I'm going to Zimbabwe. I said to my father, what are you going to do with the savings? I'm here. He said, but a master's is 2 to 3 years. I said, don't worry, I'll do that master's in 1 year. He had faith in me. He gave it to me, and I did the master's in 1 year. So sometimes when I'm shining and say I did my master's in 1 year, it's not even because of that. The money was not there. I had rejections for funding, but I still went, and my parents still had faith in me. And then after master's, I had funding for PhD. The scholarships were now there. And then also remember that things do go wrong sometimes, but God is the ultimate. I say this because for me, I am a foreigner. I've been a foreigner since I was 16 in Lesotho, in South Africa, in Eswatini. In 2023, I got a job at Stellenbosch University, and then the visa was just not coming out. It took 6 months. The university said, you can come, you can start, but we can't pay you because you don't have a visa. So I was working without pay because they would give me the money then. People were saying, these visas are taking 2 to 3 years. What are you going to do? Find a lawyer, pay them 20,000 rands. I was like, from where? So, and then I kept pushing, calling different offices at the university until someone who is called head of internationalization called my supervisor and said, who is Primrose? It is my student. Said, she's giving us a problem. After a week, I was told to come and collect my visa. People who had been applying and had submitted before me still didn't have their visas. But I kept saying, God, I'm so sorry. Yes, there's government, there's immigration, but you are the one. And these borders exist because people created them. But there's no border to you. I need my visa. I need my visa. I need my visa. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it's in line with what you needed me to share. But I just wanted something that touches different people and also shows that even though we go through these journeys and at the end it looks glamorous, a lot happens behind the scenes. So resilience is very important. And my parting verse is going to be, it's very short. It is Proverbs 16, verse 3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. Things didn't work according to the plans I had or how I thought it would be, but he had a sense of where I was going, and he made things happen. And I feel like I'm in the best place I should be. Thank you.